On the elements of the withdrawal agreement, we have quarrels with bits of them, but I have said, and I will accept, that we've said on the backstop, for example, we don't much like the way it's constructed, but we accept it. We accept that at this stage, nearly 2 years down the line, you've got to have a backstop. But the point is, the withdrawal agreement is obviously the exit, and it's coupled together. Article 50 itself couples it together with the political declaration, because both parties need to know, and we need to know, as you exit, what's the future relationship? And you can't just divorce the two, because otherwise it's a blind Brexit. It's to say, well, we go, but we don't know where we're going. And now, I mean, even this week, the Prime Minister said, I'm going to step down. That's her own internal party management. But that means that the question of where we're going next has now been subcontracted to the Tory party leadership contest. So that will now be determined by whoever wins that contest. Now, from a Labour Party opposition point of view, to say, well, we're perfectly happy to sign off exit. Where we go now, that's subcontracted to an internal Tory party battle. No, it needs to be in Parliament, it needs to be put together so we've got control over both the exit and where we're going.
What's striking as we vote about this again, and we discuss this again, is that we offered a compromise out of this 2.5 years ago. We've been trying to talk to the government, and yet they just keep bringing the same thing back.
Iain Fox, who we spoke to a little earlier on the programme, said that if this is voted down, that's your intention, it may well happen, that'll lead us to a longer extension.
Well, I think that makes sense, because we know how damaging this is for jobs in the economy. And fundamentally, when you're talking about medicine shortages and getting in, we see the impact on people's day-to-day lives. Now, I'll concede, I come from a constituency that voted overwhelmingly Remain. I come from a nation that voted overwhelmingly to Remain. But we have consistently offered to talk to the government and negotiate with them and find a way through this mess, and they haven't talked to us. And this is the same frustration that other parties are having as well.
Mr. Speaker, the reasons why we are convening today are partly to be found in the fact that today is the 29th of March, and it was today, Mr. Speaker, which this House voted some months and years ago should have been the day on which we left the European Union. However, we are today where we are, precisely. The House has before it a clear choice this morning. It can either approve this withdrawal agreement, knowing that by doing so it secures its right to an extension, or it can have declined to do so and know, in doing so, that by next week there will be no right to an extension, that any extension applied for will require some clear indication of the pathway forward and a stable majority behind it, and thirdly, that it is subject to the veto of those 27 member states.
I'm always willing to consider compromise, but as I said before, compromise has to come from a settled intention to respect an outcome. And I have to say that there is no such settled intention. Certainly by many members on this side of the House. I mean, I listened to the speech of my right honourable friend, the member for Chingford. It was quite clear from what he said that his purpose will be to use the passage of the WAP to entirely reorder the future relationship in the way he wants. Now, I don't disagree with that. It's his right. But it highlights why separating the two is plainly, in my judgment, impossible. And yet that's what we're being asked to do. Of course I give way to my right.
I hope he's not asserting that it's wrong to want to amend a bill or to debate the bill, but that to get to the bill is of vital importance, and there's nothing sinister, surely, about that.
But the bill was intended to implement the agreement for the future relationship on which we had voted. It has now been transformed into something entirely different. A free-for-all opportunity, as I understand it, although I don't suspect the government really intends that, for MPs to pile in their ideas as to not only the future relationship, but caveats in respect of BrExit, which in my view are incompatible in many cases with the withdrawal obligations themselves. Now, we have to be clear about these things. And here I revert to being an ex-law officer. course, there will be differences of view in this House, but we have to be honest in our purposes. And I do not intend to sell my constituents short, however tempting it might be for party political advantage. In any case, if ultimately we fail the country, then we as a party are not worth existing. And the national interest in this matter must come first.
For me, this is not an easy decision, because there is a lot about this bill that I do not like, and I stand on that position. But I do say that if we don't send this forward to look at the legislation, we will rue that day, because we will end up having to accept what I think is a damaging and destructive extension, meaning we will never leave the European Union. And if we say we stand up for 17.4 million people, then we have to get those people what they asked for, is to leave the European Union, and this now is the only way.
We have been told that in the event of a no deal, and even in their written preparations, in their legislation, the Irish government has said that no such thing will happen. We have argued that all along. We have argued that this agreement is based on a contract. And why would we vote today for a contract which breaks up the United Kingdom, which ties us into an arrangement with the EU that we can't get out of without their assent, which is going to be the basis for any future trade relationships that we have with them? Because the EU have made it quite clear the agreement will be the basis of any future relationships. So we go in handcuffed into any negotiations. And I don't believe that that's an agreement which is worth voting for. We voted against it the first time, we voted against it the second time, and we will vote against it this time. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, what the outcome of this vote will be today. But can I assure the House that whatever means there are available to us should this agreement go through, we will continue to oppose it, because we will not allow Northern Ireland's position within the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland's economy and the will of the people of the United Kingdom as a whole to become the plaything in the hands of bureaucrats from Brussels.
We know that the Prime Minister is going to depart, and we're all going to be left in the hands of the Tory MPs that are going to appoint a new Prime Minister, a Prime Minister who is in all event likely to be a Brexiteer. And I appeal to Labour members, don't give that authority to the Conservative Party. Don't be the midwives of Brexit. Don't allow this Tory government, on the backs of a few Labour MPs, to deliver a hard Brexit that is going to imperil all our constituents.
Mr. Speaker, I think it should be a matter of profound regret to every member of this House that once again we have been unable to support leaving the European Union in an orderly fashion. The implications of the House's decision are grave. The legal default now is that the United Kingdom is due to leave the European Union on the 12th of April, in just 14 days' time. That is not enough time to agree, legislate for and ratify a deal, and yet the House has been clear it will not permit leaving without a deal. And so we will have to agree an alternative way forward. The European Union has been clear that any further extension will need to have a clear purpose and will need to be agreed unanimously by the heads of the other 27 member states ahead of the 12th of April. It is almost certain to involve the United Kingdom being required to hold European parliamentary elections. On Monday, this House will continue the process to see if there is a stable majority for a particular alternative version of our future relationship with the EU. Of course, all of the options will require the withdrawal agreement. Mr. Speaker, I fear we are reaching the limits of this process in this House. This House has rejected no deal. It has rejected no Brexit. On Wednesday, it rejected all the variations of the deal on the table. And today, it has rejected approving the withdrawal agreement alone and continuing a process on the future. This government will continue to press the case for the orderly Brexit that the result of the referendum demands.
We should all be aware of the responsibilities that we all have in this House, the seriousness of the situation that we are in. And I would say respectfully to the Prime Minister, she now has to accept that her deal has been defeated 3 times. And I applaud the members of Parliament on all sides that voted against the government's proposition. It is a bad deal, and we have to find a way out of the crisis that we are in. All of our constituents would expect that. We must give ourselves time, and I suggest to the Prime Minister we now must look seriously at the option of revocation. We need to apply the handbrake to this process.
Well, we're going to have the European elections, and this new party that we formed will be standing in those elections. I think that the House, again, has spoken. This must be the end of her deal in this place. And I think if my advice to her, and I've talked to other ministers about it, is, you know, it has been negotiated, this deal. I don't like it, but I accept it as a deliverable form of Brexit. Let's now get it back to the British people. Let them have the right to vote in the same way and change their minds as that we saw people like Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg, many other people today cast their vote differently. They changed their minds. The British people are also entitled to change their minds and have their final say, that confirmatory vote. Now we know what Brexit looks like, and 3 years on almost.
If only that thesis were true. I mean, if only that thesis were true. If that thesis were true, we would have voted for the deal and we'd be leaving successfully. The problem is the deal's rotten, it stinks, it triple locks us into the institutions of the EU, particularly if the political declaration had been carried through, and that's why overwhelmingly it's been Eurosceptic Conservatives who've been opposing it. You know, when Remain colleagues are telling you need to be voting for this deal, you know, and Eurosceptics are nervy, you should maybe start picking up this is not a good deal. I've had people here today congratulating me and thanking me. Normal voters grateful that we've voted down this deal because they know it stinks.
But you've got to deal with what's in front of you and what you judge to be in the best interests of Northern Ireland. I believe that, yes, of course, nobody in our party or most sensible unionists want to see Jeremy Corbyn in office, but that doesn't mean then we vote for something that is injurious to the union. So what we've got to do is to find a sensible way forward that ensures we do get a withdrawal agreement, which we can vote for, and which ensures we don't have Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister.
But are you ultimately making a choice between Brexit and the UK?
Look, the union will always be first for us.
Nigel Dodds couldn't be clearer. Thank you very much indeed. So that's the reaction there from the DUP.
And you can see there the number of protesters in Parliament Square has grown considerably throughout the day. Certainly this morning it was Leave demonstrators gathering there. I'm assuming it is still Leave demonstrators who are in that particular area, but there are demonstrations planned today by people on both sides of this debate, Remain and Leave. And they are gathered there, of course, on the day that we were meant to leave the EU. It wasn't anticipated, it wasn't known that we would actually be going through what has happened today in political terms today, in terms of that vote that's happened inside the Commons. That became an imperative because of the schedule that has been laid out by the EU in terms of an extension. But it's certainly not what anybody would have anticipated previously, that on this day that we were supposed to leave, Parliament would be voting yet again on the withdrawal agreement, and yet again that MPs would reject it.